All right, everyone. So I think we're live. I'm going to be starting very soon. I'm just getting a couple of things arranged on my desk and just kind of getting my little area all set up and ready to go. You should see a picture actually on the screen. And just for the record, I don't think I have any control over messages or like seeing anyone, saying anything to me. So I do apologize for that. Keep in mind I'm watching my paper and stuff. So yeah, hopefully, if you have any questions, I apologize if I can't necessarily see them. But yeah, thank you so much. In fact, I'm going to type real fast. I might have an admin who can help us out. Okay. But yeah, I think we're gonna go ahead and get started, and I will. Hopefully, you can see the picture and everything. I have an admin that I'm talking to so that they can try to send questions. Okay, cool. Yeah. In fact, if you don't mind, I'm typing to the admin right now. Um, cool. Okay. So I think we'll officially get started. Thanks for the being here for that soft opening as I'm trying to get everything all set up. My name is David Tenorio, so I'm an art instructor. Welcome to this live stream from Sktchy, of course, our awesome drawing and learning website that we are hosting a new class on. And so Sktchy is a platform. In fact, we'll write that down. Of course, if you're on here, you most likely know Sktchy, but just in case you are new here or new to Sktchy, Sktchy is a learning platform that has a huge variety of artists and even different mediums, especially drawing mediums like pen and pencil. And there are lots of different classes on Sktchy that are based on challenges like 30 days of drawing where you draw 30 different people. And then there's also more specialized classes. And I'm actually hosting and about to launch my first class on drawing the head. And so today I'm going to be drawing the head. Hopefully, I'm doing a little point here. You can see this picture, I believe, on the side of the screen. And we will take some questions. I think admin again from Sktchy is live, and they can take questions or they can see the questions. And so I should be able to see those and answer them as well. But yeah, I'm going to draw this head. I'm going to talk a little bit about it, kind of give you a preview of what it's like for the class. And then if you have questions or if you have anything that you're interested in seeing for drawing the head, I'm also happy to take that as well. So I think we'll go ahead and we'll get started. And I'm going to type a message real fast. Uh, okay, so first let's talk about some supplies, and I'm actually going to zoom my camera out just a little bit so you guys can see this better. I know I have that picture on the screen. If for any reason things feel really blocked, you let me know. But yeah, let's talk supplies real fast. So I actually brought a bunch of drawing supplies over here. I'm going to be drawing with ballpoint pen. So this is my ballpoint pen that I like to use a lot. It's called the Delphonics pen. Here we go. So I have my sketchbook. I have my ballpoint pen. I have a couple other ballpoint pens here. I'll talk a little bit about this, especially if you're like, hey, I love supplies. Like, what are these brands? You just let me know, and I'll talk about them a little more in depth. We have Delphonics. We have a ballograph. I'll draw with that. And then I do have some pencils. I have everything from like typical drawing pencils, like a Blackwing. I have some various like mechanical pencils. I have one of my absolute favorite mechanical pencils, which is the Pentel Graph Gear. And then I even have some colored pencil that I like to use. So again, the way I feel like this is going to go is I'm going to draw. I definitely encourage you to ask questions. As far as I can tell now, I have over here on the side of my screen, I can see people asking questions because my admin will talk and type to me. So yeah, feel free to please talk to me while I'm drawing. The sketchbook, by the way, is this Maroman sketchbook that has paper that feels a lot like typing paper, which I like a lot. Especially when I'm doing ballpoint pen, I like this paper to kind of have more of a smooth finish. So yeah, let's go to a blank page. And yeah, again, please ask some questions. That's kind of the cool part about the live, right? Is just ask anything you want. You can ask what I ate for breakfast. The answer is nothing yet because I'm because I'm drawing and I'm ready to do some art. I'll eat some breakfast afterwards, right? But yeah, ask me any questions. And in the meantime, I'll start some drawing and then also I'll talk a little bit about the class. Um, All right, we already got our first question real fast. Lainey, hey Lainey, great to see you. I understand when the reference is facing front why you put the center line in the center, but I'm confused about when someone is where someone's looking. Can you explain in detail, maybe three-quarter view? Yeah. So actually, before I draw the head, which I'd love to sit here and I'll draw some heads. In particular, this reference one, I'll do a little bit of like intro of some of the stuff that I do, in particular that idea. So yeah, Wayne of course is talking about what is called the ball and jaw method. Great way to kick it off, Laney. We'll do that drawing, but I'd love to start with that too, a little bit of intro. So what Laney is referring to is the way that I always start the head, which would be that the head can be started as, a circle. That would be like our most basic one. I'll do a quick little zoom in on here. I got a little control like zoom and stuff, so if you guys have anything like that where you're like, hey, I can't see it very well, you just let me know. So yeah, we usually start the head as a circle. And then what I like to say is that the head can, become more like an egg or like an oval. And what's great is like these reference the idea of the head, but they're not quite there in terms of like shape. So what Laney's referencing that I talk a lot about is what I call the ball and jaw method, which actually comes from people like Loomis. I would say this is a little bit of like structure drawing more from like 20th century, maybe not like too far back. And ball and jaw is the idea that you draw a ball, you draw where the figure is looking, and then you draw a jaw. And this actually ties into possibly like the most important thing to me about life drawing. Like if, as someone who teaches figure drawing, I do a lot of portraiture, but I've taught figure drawing, like the entire figure for a long time. As someone who's done that, there's, theories, right? And one of my favorite theories is this idea of moving parts. So like what are pieces of the body that could be separated or could behave independently? And that's what this ball and jaw is all about. Is it's a way of showing the head as these two moving parts. So you have, of course, the one part which is your cranium, right, like the top of your head. You have the second part which is your jaw. Now, where this becomes especially useful, in my opinion, is, as Lainey was asking, when you start to change the view of the head, like when you see someone that you're drawing in different views. So, as an example, this is what we call a front view, right, where we just draw, the ball. Again, where the figure's looking, the jaw. We have the profile view, right, which is where the figure is turning completely to the side. Now, admittedly, this ball or circle is like a little bit flatter, like just a little more toned down. So we draw it like a little bit more squished. So ball, where the figure is looking, in this case to the side. And the jaw. So this is where I think the ball and jaw is huge because it really helps with the idea of turning the head, especially in profile, and seeing that exact, really correct shape. A shape, of course, that's referencing a skull. As I always like to say, every one of us has skulls sitting on our desk. I know we all do at home. And so this is referencing that idea of like the skull, in particular, like how this shape truly looks in the back. So the ball and jaw, we have the front, we have the profile, right? And then reaching Laney's idea, we have what's called three-quarter view, which is extremely popular, like in how you look at people, like oftentimes how you're seeing people. And it's what we'd say is the most dynamic way to look at people. And so that would be the ball, where the figure is looking, and then that jaw. So Lainey's question was saying, I'm confused about like make a line where he or she is looking. Can you explain that in detail? And then yeah, Jana. By the way, I see Sharon saying, please put the supplies in the chat. Yeah, no problem. I'll get a little more detailed. I'll even maybe like write down the list so you can see it on here. And then Jana or Yana possibly. Hope I'm getting that correct. Says, how's a vertical line where the figure is looking? So what we're thinking a lot about with that is that this vertical line is like the center of the face, right? So what we're trying to say is, which direction is the face or the head looking, especially in 3D, right? So a really great thing to clarify, I'm actually really glad I'm getting these questions, would be we might sometimes think of the figure looking as their eyes, like where are their eyes directed, or like what are they looking at with their eyes, right? And so where the figure is looking, like in this kind of context, you know, the figure's view, yeah, it's just all about the head. Like, where is the figure turned towards? Where's their head turned towards when we say that? Where are they looking? So, for instance, we'd say, the figure is looking straight ahead or to the front. The figure is looking to the side or in profile. The figure is looking, in this case, in what's called 3/4, where it's turned slightly. Again, that's a great question because it could be confused as like, well, we don't know where the figure's eyes are. Like, how can we tell where they're looking? Even when we look at the reference picture, we'd say, this figure over here looks like they're looking at the camera. But yeah, when we talk about like where they're looking, we're talking a lot about this center line to show like where is that head directed. If you think about it, your eyes would be like a detail. Like it's wonderful that they're focused on something, they're looking at something, but we talk in terms of like the head. Like where is the head looking? To the front, to the profile, 3/4, even behind, things like that. Trudy says, I sometimes find the tilted to the side and angled upwards head difficult to use the ball and jaw technique. Tilt to the side, angled upwards. Yeah, I think I know what that is, which I'll draw in a second. And then Sharon, of course, Sharon says, where do you buy the skull? Sharon, I can't believe you don't have a skull on your desk. I thought all of us have skulls just lying around, right? There's two I have over here. I gotta be honest, this one is very special. This is a cool one that I got from a sculptor at an art convention in LA, and this was years and years ago. I don't even, unfortunately, remember his name. I could dig around and I think find it, but yeah, this is like a little art sculpture that's beautiful. I love this one. And then I can put a link later, especially with our awesome admin Jordan, who's helping out today. I think I just got this on Amazon. This skull, which is really nice as well. So yeah, this is a great one to study from. This same thing, I got this from, to be honest, I think I got this from Blick, like years and years ago, this plaster one. But yeah, skulls are great to have, again, to kind of test some of this stuff out, especially the question that Trudy was asking, like how do you draw a head that's like a little bit tilted upwards? Where does the ball and jaw help you with that? We'll talk about in a second. I do like these questions a lot. I'll keep answering them. And of course, I know potentially some people are like, hey, I want to see this like drawing. Let's do some portraits. So I'll get to that as well. But yeah, check it out on Amazon. I'll give Jordan the details later. We can make a little post about that. But yeah, they're great to have. And of course, dig around for stuff like this. Go to like an art market, go to like a convention, and you might find really neat little, ideas like that. So yeah, one more quick one about, again, I'll keep asking the questions. I love the dialogue. I'll answer Trudy and then I'll start with this one over here, the picture. So Tree is saying, sometimes I find the tilted to the side and angled upwards head difficult to use this ball and jaw idea. So as far as I can tell, that's where we're saying we tilt to the side. In fact, we could even say this technically, like tilt to the side and look up. Oh, cool. I think I see a link flying up on there. Yeah, in fact, I'm not going to click away because I feel like my stream is very like sensitive, like my connection and everything. So I'll click on that later, but I'm going to leave it alone for now. While I'm tethered on here. Ball and jaw when the head's turned to the side. I like the idea of thinking of the profile potentially. So tilting it up, characters looking to the side, tilt it up a little bit. Sometimes I think these situations get tricky just because of the neck. So meaning the kind of like the connection of the neck or how that works. Here's our little ear. When you think about it, Trudy, the great question, when you think about it, tilting the head in many of these ways, even like in the 3/4, doesn't really, it doesn't affect like a whole lot structure wise. Like we sort of think like, oh, like we don't really change like that much of the shapes. And then at the same time, I'm going to answer that in a minute. I say that question. At the same time, things don't change a lot totally, right? It's like all that anatomy stays the same. But I will be really honest, like I think this is what gets very interesting when we turn the head in perspective is like the connection of the neck can be kind of interesting to think about, like how the deck interacts. We see things even like this. If the head's tilted up a little bit, we'll sort of see again the underside of the jaw, kind of like this shape right here on the bottom. So I think in a again like a oh there we go. I was thinking Trudy says I was thinking more of a three-quarter view that's tilted one ear lower than the other. Yeah, perfect. So I think Trudy, I'm getting these messages typed to me, so I'll try to answer like at the same time you're typing, or as close as possible. But yeah, you probably mean more like this one right here. Which here, give me a second. I think I can even zoom in a little bit. So I think you mean more like that. So yeah, and actually, you, Trudy, as someone who's probably experienced with this or doing a little bit of this work, here I'm going to turn this quick little speaker off next to me. As someone who's like using the right language or like some really strong language for this, what I can tell is that you already pick up on clues like this, like about the ear. So yeah, head that's tilted, one ear lower than the other. Honestly, like you're saying, you're preaching a little bit of what I think is so important about like how do you make this work? Like how do you draw a head that looks tilted? And so much of it is this clue. So and if I need to answer this question a little bit deeper, you let me know, Trudy. And then also, this is great content for like you guys who follow Sktchy on Instagram. We could always put like a little story up or something about it. So yeah, I'll answer this real quick. I'll keep taking some questions, but then I'll definitely start to draw this head over here, so you can see a little bit of that. So yeah, this question about the head turning up or tilting and the ear, one ear lower than the other, like that's such an important idea to me about how the head looks tilted, because in a normal front-facing head, our ears, like as a proportion, they are from about the bottom of our nose, so kind of like about the bottom right there where it stops, to our brow. So let's say here's our brow. Here's a little bit of eye. So yeah, your ear's kind of in this range of your nose to your brow. And I'm being very ambiguous on purpose, saying like range, because as we like to know, like we can look different. I mean, some people have bigger and smaller ears. This stuff is always like 90% there. I mean, like your proportions are basically 90% mine, or even 99%. The only thing that really changes are shapes, like the shape of your nose or the shape of your mouth compared to mine or your ears. But the way we line up is actually pretty tight. Like it's a pretty nice tight formula, particularly because of our skull, like of our skeleton. Anyway, so our ear lines up with our bottom of our nose and like about the brow. So like a little bit around the brow. So what's so cool when the head tilts is that right away we see these huge visual cues about how the ear, if it's not lining up correctly, like it's not lining up with the nose or the brow, that's this huge indicator that the head is tilting. And what I love is we can actually, right over here, hopefully I think this corresponds to my point, right over here when we look at this figure, this head on the screen, you see exactly that. When you get really deeper into drawing and a little bit more advanced, and then I'm seeing real fast. Awesome, Elena, thank you so much. And then Spinny says, "Could you please add ears to the heads you drew first?" Yeah, I'll do that while I'm talking. So the portrait, like the head that we see on the right, when we first start figure drawing or portrait drawing, we would say like, oh, this is a figure that's looking towards us. So I'm talking about the one right here. We'd say, how do we diagnose this, or how do we, describe this? We'd say the figures is staring straight at us, right? What gets more advanced, which is really cool, is not only is that figure staring straight at us, but there is a bit of perspective happening with that figure. And the perspective would be what I'm talking about here, where we'd say, hey, if our ear lines up with about the bottom of our nose and the top of our brow, so kind of like in this little zone right here, we come over here, and my pen can't overlap, but hopefully the pointing works. we come over here and we say, you know what? There's some behavior here that's interesting, because even though the figure is facing from the front, as soon as we look at the bottom of their ear, again, I can't draw over the photo, right? I can't do that, but you can see if it lines up. If I draw from the bottom of the ear, you see that the bottom of the ear is actually lining up with like the mouth, almost like the lip line. The top of the ear is kind of in the middle of the nose. So we'd say, whoa, man, like this is not the proportion that Dave's talking about. This is not the proportion that we've learned potentially. And the idea would be like, yeah, that's awesome, because that shows you that tilt. So that's that advanced idea of perspective when you draw the figure. That here's a figure in largely like very normal perspective, like facing straight at you or straight at your eye level. And then as soon as you do this, so watch how the ear kind of lines up with the bottom of the nose. As soon as you do this, the figure starts to look up. You see how that ear now lines up with the mouth even, right? The ear is like our biggest clue to perspective. It's like one of the instant ways we see that someone's head is tilted, or that we have to infuse a little bit of perspective. And even in the class, speaking of, I know I'm going on about drawing all the time with this stuff right now, but in the class that I put on, I talk about that. That's like one of the things actually covered when we talk about drawing the ear, is how important it is for perspective. I don't want to leave out the comment from Stena that says if I'm upgraded to being a necromancer with my collection, I'm getting there, right? I got enough skulls that I'm probably like a necromancer novice, but I will add more. I promise that, Stena. Great questions. Again, I like all that stuff coming in, especially about the ear. But by the way, thank you for like that interest. Like this is the stuff that I get really excited about. As much as I love just like straight up drawing portraits, or sketching portraits, shading and all that. What really excites me is people like you in the room right now that get into like structure, that you're really into like how to build the head. The very reason that I do all this work, and even the way that I talk and draw, the reason that I think a lot about drawing the head is I like the idea of like being able to build it. Like I like the idea of being able to invent on it a little bit. And then one of my absolute favorite things is I love the idea that I can draw people very quickly. That I don't need a photo all the time, or I could draw someone like in the wild, like at a coffee shop or something. I love having that power, that ability, and this idea of like being able to engineer. I think really helps with that, to be able to like understand. And it goes into that too, ultimately. Like why do I feel good when I'm drawing heads? Like we all should be. We all should feel awesome when we're just drawing and enjoying ourselves. But what makes it feel so good is I feel confident because I understand quite a bit about the head, or I've wanted to learn about it. So that's my favorite thing to encourage, is ask questions like you're doing right now. That's where this whole setting is so fun, is ask questions, like understand more about what you're drawing, and your drawings will actually improve, as we'd like to say, like they'll get better, but also you'll just feel better. You'll feel better drawing because you understand more, which is great. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start on this head. You guys can continue asking me questions, especially if it's a super solid question. I'll take like a little deviance and draw or talk about it. But I know that some of us might want to see this guy go or get going, so I'm going to work on that. So supplies, right? I like hearing about that. I'm using one of my favorite pens, the Delphonics ballpoint pen. My mom is really good at finding these pens for me because they're sometimes hard to find, although I think now they're on Amazon. But this is one of my favorite ballpoint pens because even maybe potentially from the drawing you see here on the right, you can tell they're very smooth. They feel a lot like a pencil to me, which is what I love. And one of my favorite things is, can I have the subtlety of pencil, but still have the kind of like depth of ink, where ink is like a little bit stronger, right? So, let's see. Yep, I don't see any other questions for now. Thanks for typing those out. Let's do a little bit of drawing. So speaking of, I'll start with my ball and jaw. By the way, you see my hand like running on the paper a lot. That's another thing I love about ink, is you don't like smudge as much as pencil, which sometimes can be a little bit tricky. Here, I'm actually going to move. If only you could see my computer screen right now where I'm looking at this photo. It's just like crazy. I see like my stream and this chat box where I'm trying to look at chat. It's pretty wild. Okay, so Draw the ball. Notice how if you can't see this very well, I find that a good thing because that's my first lines, right? They're actually quite thin. And also notice that when I'm sketching, I'm using so much of my arm. I always caution, or at least I tell you to like kind of understand the differences from handwriting hand, which is like you draw and you write like this, versus using more of your arm. So what I often tell people is I genuinely think you should hold the tool, whatever you're using, however you want. Just hold it a little bit higher. So like if you're using that handwriting hand, just grab it a little bit higher up. And that way you engage more of your arm. It's not as much of like the wrist. The wrist is great when you're shading or you're doing like tiny things, but in those early stages you really want to engage that whole arm. So ball, where the figure's looking, jaw. And this is my template or my base, right? So this means that this has no likeness what I'm doing right now. It doesn't look like the figure yet. That's good in my opinion. I'm giving myself like my clay that I can sculpt with. I have information on the paper that I can mess around with. Now, there's a lot of different ways you could start. I tend to be kind of a nose centric person. So, meaning like I actually like to start with the nose. And I'm fully prepared to shift and move these things around. And you'll see that as I'm drawing. And also what I'm implying is I doubt very highly some of these first moves I draw are like perfect or like totally correct. But by drawing so thin and so light, I give myself a lot of room to move and manipulate, even with pen, even with ink. Like already, I can tell this needs to be higher. And normally, this is the kind of thing that for some of us or myself, I go like, oh wow, like I'm like shifting this entire thing I drew in ink. But you'll, as I like to say, you'll see how it just gets shaded and integrated and as if it never happened. Yeah, speaking of, I'm going to really ramp this little shape up a bit. So, um, in the class that I'm launching with Sktchy, I talk about this stuff, the ball and jaw, right? I have like a whole lesson on that, and then the idea with the class, it's really cool. It's one of the classes that I feel like really reflects how I think or teach, which is I teach all the parts in the class. So I teach like every part of the drawing, or excuse me, every part of the face, like each part of the features. I do a little discussion on, and the idea is we sort of like learn the pieces of the face, and then at the end we put heads together, like we put full heads, and so you actually get to draw in the class um, heads the whole time. Like we're kind of drawing them piece by piece. Like let's draw a head and like focus on the ears. Let's draw a head and focus on the mouth or the lips. And then at the very end, you've kind of built up hopefully a lot of practice so that we can put some entire heads together. So I think it's a really cool again structure. It really, I mean that it like reflects kind of the way that I like to approach anything that I'm learning, where I want to learn the pieces of it first and then sort of put it together. And a lot of it revolves around what you saw even from these questions, which are, structure drawing, which means like drawing simple shapes or sort of like starting with simple shapes. A lot of it does involve behavior. What that means is like I do talk a lot about like the behavior of the eye, like how it kind of works or how it can work, especially with respect to lighting. I talk about like the behavior of hair. I talk about the structure of like the lips, things like that. So there's tips on behavior. And then also to the best of my ability, which I'm even doing right now, the class is also just a process, I mean like the way that I would draw or approach things. Um, that's I think my favorite thing about Sktchy. Like what I like the platform of course a lot, and then what I think is really cool about Sktchy is you can do those courses where you do like 30 days, 30 drawings, and you can see like all these different ways people draw. And the idea, of course, would be like you could pick up on, a little tip or a little process idea from everyone. And just so you know, if you guys take the classes and you watch like the comments and stuff, or even the drawings that get posted on Instagram, you'll see like we as instructors, quote unquote instructors, we're all artists. All of us are artists in all of this, right? Even that distinction sometimes is funny. But the all that to say, like we as instructors are looking at each other's videos and drawing and sketching and kind of like keeping track with like what's going on, and so it's really cool. It's definitely a cool community. I mean, you're sitting in here in this room or watching a little bit because you're part of that awesome community. And then I think it speaks a lot to what I love in drawing, which is, yeah, process. Like, how do people draw or approach things? Um, and the idea, I think, ultimately would be you you look at as many people as possible and even as much artwork as possible, and you pick up little things from everyone. Like one of my favorite things I feel proud of as an instructor is I like tips. Like I just like tips and behavior and all this stuff I talked about over here on the right to start the day. I'm just a person that likes to throw out a lot of info so that you feel, as I said, confident, that you have that info. Everyone's got these different ways to draw, different approaches. I'm a very like tip based person. Like I like all those little ideas. I look for those ideas all the time. Everything I'm telling you, I in a grateful way I learned from someone else or I picked up from someone else. Although I will admit I got a few original ones. I definitely have a few original theories or ideas that I've gotten over time and from drawing the head so much. So right now, like I have my clay. I can kind of like sculpt and mess with this. And for those of you that are they're keeping track or kind of like keeping up with what's happening on screen, I'm pretty chill in these early stages. I mean, like I'm not committing, right? I'm not drawing like really dark lines. I'm not committing to anything really in depth. I at times have talked about like the way I sketch almost as like constellation sometimes, meaning like, how a constellation in the sky or in, the stars, it's like, these dots that create like the Big Dipper or, the bear, things like that. I kind of do the same thing where I'm sort of like very lightly drawing. I'm sort of tapping just like little moments here and there. I want to leave myself an out, right? I mean, like I want to leave myself an ability to change something, but also I have to commit truly. I mean, like I have to make a commitment and get started with the drawing. That's where I like the nose a lot. The nose is usually like my anchor, my part of the drawing that I really base a lot of my other pieces off of. So even though I'm drawing, again, I still have like an eye towards the chat that's being relayed to me. So if you have any questions, you have any comments, again, one thing I'd love to hear is, you can type in the chat, like, do you draw a lot with ink? Do you draw more with pencil? What kind of tools do you draw heads with? I don't do it too often currently, but I've done like a lot of painting, even with portraiture where I paint portraits or I do watercolor. So yeah, I'd love to hear like what are some of your tools. So Renee asks, how many portraits will you be drawing in the class, and how do you decide what people or reference images you want to use? Those are two good questions. In the class, I think on a numeric level, it's kind of high. I want to say there's probably like, well, I'll tell you real fast. There's and of course Jordan, my admin, who's awesome today for helping. He can back me up on these numbers. I want to say there's like 8 or 9 chapters. And let's say like a chapter on like the ball and jaw or a chapter on the eyes. We usually do 3 heads. So like if I'm teaching a lesson about drawing eyes, we'll draw 3 heads with eyes. And part of the build up, as I mentioned, is that we'll draw like the structure of the head and then we'll focus on the eyes, like even just putting the eyes on the head. We'll have separate reference pictures for that. Yeah, Jordan, I think typed on there, he says 21. So that sounds about right. There's probably like in total like 20 plus heads that are being drawn. And then like I would say anywhere from like 6 to even like 10 heads get like very deep and deeper into detail. So meaning like we draw like a ball and jaw, like let's say even down here if you can still see this one. We'll draw it if we're doing an eye lesson or let's say the ear lesson like this, we'll sort of draw the ear. We'll place the other features we've been talking about, but we'll kind of put an emphasis on one part. And then we build to the end where we do some deeper portraits, some deeper drawings, which I know I'm on a live. I don't want to run away, but I could potentially run real fast. There's a shelf next to me, and I can grab those drawings. I think I know where they are, so I might do that in a second to show you from the class. But yeah, so there's a number of portraits, which is awesome, like a lot of stuff we get through. And then Renee's follow up to that was how do you decide what people or reference images to use? I think I definitely have a taste. You know what I mean? I think if even for those of you who are awesome and you've taken my classes and you even like are uh the joke would be like you're taking the classes and you're still here, like you're still listening or watching me draw. Like, I mean, something must be going okay, right? You kind of see like a little flavor of what I like for reference pictures. And here's the way I would describe it. Like, first of all, like the reference pictures that I really pick, I just really like. It's actually as simple as that, right? It's like I look through a lot of pictures. So to be honest, I'm not very like quick when I pick reference pictures. Like I'm scrolling and scrolling. I'll sometimes look through like 100 photos, like really in depth. I mean, like I stop and I look at them. I look at like 100 before like one just really catches my eye, and I'm like, oh, that's it. That's the one I want to draw, right? But yeah, it starts with just being stuff I like. That's a non-answer, but it's true. It's like I just am attracted to certain pictures. But I think what I tend to look for, I'll tell you a couple things. One is I do really like even like this picture right here. I love like a little bit of challenge, like where there's maybe an interesting perspective going on. Maybe there's like a little bit of even like fabric sometimes for people who have taken my classes, that I actually really like fabric and like clothing. And even when we're doing portraiture, I'll try to find like a cool collar or even like a lovely headdress or something. So I like challenge. I look for like perspective. I look for like some fabric that could be cool. And then I source a lot of really nice pictures that do look professional in a way. So meaning they look like they were taken with a nice camera. Even like this picture looks very staged. I mean, like the figure is probably in like a portrait session being photographed. But I do like kind of like candid photos, and not candid like oh, we're at like a party or something and like you take a quick photo. That can be nice, like people like talking or laughing. Like I like stuff like that. But I do like this kind of like nice um like, oh, like caught in the moment kind of picture. Like I think the pictures that don't totally appeal to me, and this is great, it's always good to have like bias or a real opinion. I think the pictures don't appeal to me feel like they were done in like a photography studio, that there's like a stage or like a backdrop or something. They're beautiful for like lighting and like learning even like some in-depth, you know, information about the face, but I don't like stuff like that. Like I think even if I had to put a trend on what I like, I bet I can't tell this, but I bet that a lot of my pictures are outdoors. Like where people are outdoors, and that comes from this idea that I like people again a little bit more like candid, like kind of caught in a moment. I do like people being in an environment or even like an environment that feels really particular to them, like their world or their space. And then I don't talk about this much. I don't need to because I'm of course doing portraiture, but I work in entertainment design, and so I like world building, and I like people, like I said, like showing that off and showing off their world and who they are. Even like in this photo, I like how minimal it is, like with the simple shirt and like kind of the nice expression. But yeah, it also just kind of feel like that shirt and everything just really fits. It feels like very authentic. It's kind of like a long-winded answer, but I'll end it on that because that's one of my favorite words or favorite ideas is being authentic. Like be authentic, show authenticity in what you do and your choices and even the way you carry yourself. And so I think, yeah, to be honest, I stop on a lot of photos because they just feel extremely authentic to me. The person feels authentic. The way they were captured feels really authentic. It's yeah, it's even like in these techniques and stuff I'm talking about, right? it's about like trying to find things that feel reliable, authentic, honest, like honest technique. Um, let's see. Here's some good stuff coming in. Rat Mammy. That's a sick name. I don't know why. It just kind of sounds like a cool like race car driver name. Rat Mammy. I could spend hours looking for a picture. Yeah, I feel the same when I'm doing. To be honest, Jordan, who's in the room right now, probably laugh at this. For this class that I'm launching with Sktchy, yeah, it took me like forever to pick all those pictures. Like that was a big part of the whole process. Was I spent forever collecting pictures because, of course, I wanted them to be stuff that I like, and then I had to collect so many. Right? It's like I had to grab so many photos for the class, so I was just entrenched in trying to find good photos. Um, Lainey says I'm most comfortable with graphic, and then Lainey, of course, makes me feel so alive when she says I signed up when David's class was announced. I love that. It makes me feel so good. I'll never not say that. It feels really, it means a lot to have your support, and of course, it means a lot to Sktchy, like Sktchy as a platform to have that support, and so that's super awesome. Again, I love what we're doing right now. I love being able to like draw, chat a little bit, have some community. It's a wonderful thing, and of course, Lainey, it's so great to see you. And thank you for that. That's awesome. And then Wire Art says, I like the photo you're using here. Yeah, that's great. Again, I think there's like technical reasons I like it, but then I also just like it. And I stopped like overthinking. I give like big long-winded answers, but yeah, deep down I just started to pick pictures that I really like, stuff that I think looks good. And like I said, stuff I think looks challenging, like kind of has some challenge to it. Um, so speaking of like in this format of like drawing and kind of talking, I'm aware that I'm kind of like moving along and I'm not always narrating, but I really hope that you can pick up a lot of ideas, especially this idea, again, of like in my drawing right now, building, I'm like layering up, I'm sort of like solidifying, especially with my time, like doing a nice, live session like this. I always tell people, and I mean this, like I'm going for like, about like 85 or 90% accuracy or feeling good about like proportion. That's the trade-off. Like I teach a method that's quite efficient. Like it's kind of like a faster method of drawing. And the idea again is I love this drawing method to suit people that want to draw live, like kind of draw outdoors or draw people quickly. I even always say stuff like I rather draw like 10 portraits in an hour than like maybe one hour one. The irony being I'm doing like a 1 hour right now. But yeah, it's like I like efficiency and like kind of moving through the figure. And you have trade-off, like a nice way that I would put it, I mean like just a really honest way. As someone who's done academic drawing, something like I've done those really deep, truly slow, like 20 or 30-hour drawings, beautiful stuff, right? You get to like render, you're basically like, even with pencil, you're like a painter in a way. Um, as someone who's done that, I and loves it. I'm obviously like, I would call myself a technical person with like the stuff on the right side of the paper. I just learned to really like an energy in sketching. Um, and I like sketching literally. You know what I mean? Like it's like one of my favorite mediums is the literal term like sketching or sketchbook versus even a drawing sometimes. And usually the way that I distinguish those two would be that a drawing to me is a little bit more like final and prepared and kind of, framed even. Like it just kind of has an ending. The end goal is like a little bit more polished and pristine. Sketching to me is like your sketchbook, like a random kind of like piece of paper. Someone might want to like take it or love it or something, but it's like documenting. I think sketching to me is documenting, investigating, and so it just appeals to me, and it's what I really like to do. And a wonderful thing is I've been teaching for I always start my videos the same, and that's kind of like on purpose. It has a nice cadence, right? I say, hey, I'm David, and I've been teaching for about 15 years, which I have, and what I'm building towards is like as someone who's taught for 15 years, I'm settling in a lot to like what I really want to do or what I like to do. You know, I I have so many years of experience of teaching like painting, of teaching, fine art. And I'm in a sweet spot now where I'm really settling into like what do I really want to talk about with people, and it would be sketching. For all those reasons I said too. It's sketching is a way of like investigating, sketching is a way like of maintaining like a practice or like a routine, even sometimes more than like the fine arts that like involve more effort. And it also just has like an energy that I love. It has like a nice sort of process inside of it. That's why I like process. That's why I like seeing the ball and jaw. Or I don't really care that you see that circle going through, because it's all about seeing some of that artist's process in the drawing. Um, yeah, and Stina says, uh, looks so much like pencil. Oh, sorry. Actually, there's some backup here. Let me see. Heather says, I'm struggling with his head lift. Any specific tips on how to keep it from sliding into a straight portrait? Yeah, I think even I was making a lot of these adjustments early on that it's those ears, like I said. I think like lowering those ears. Um, I will say this, like I'm just talking on a skeletal level that we see like a lot of chin down here when you're tilting your head, right? So you would see like more of the figure's chin technically, like this. And so, find that little like idea of his chin, and then emphasizing that shadow underneath is important, right? Like meaning the scale of it. Like I would even argue right now, like mine could be a little bit wider, like a little bit deeper. But that ear to me is the ticket. Like that's the one that really sells it to me, for having some tilt. And it's not easy to capture because it's subtle. Like most things in the portrait, and when you're drawing, it's like a subtle amount of like ear lowering, but not like a ton, right? But yeah, that'd be my advice just from those beginning ideas, even we talked about. Is I think the ears are huge to make it have that little bit of tilt. Bernard says, "Oh hey Bernard, yeah, I recognize Bernard. I appreciate your tips. I signed up based on your previous sessions. Thanks, David. Yeah, awesome. That again is so cool. I love that you feel a momentum from like all the stuff that's been talked about in previous sessions. And then yeah, Stennis says it looks so much like pencil. Wish we had those pens here. You can never have too many supplies, right? 100%. Yeah, I moved a few years ago and like donated a bunch of supplies, and yeah, yeah, like an addiction layer. It's like, I got rid of like all the supplies. I've cut down a little bit. I feel better. And then sure enough, like, fast forward to now and my desk is like covered in stuff again. I literally have, this was not hard to do. This was just 2 seconds of like next to my desk. I was like, oh, let me grab some stuff that I might use, or maybe I want to talk about. Like I'm just swimming in supplies. But you find ones that you like this Delphonics pen, and you stick with them a lot. And then again, there are like a lot of alternatives. I mean, like there's definitely stuff out there that feels really good. In fact, I'll take a second because I know there's supply talk earlier in the day or earlier in the video. So part of the reason that I like this pen, like we're seeing potentially, is it is very light. It's like very faded and kind of has this like pencil vibe. And to be honest, it's a little bit tricky to find. You can find it now. Like again, my mom was like the expert. She bought me like a couple of backup ones. She bought me some pen refills from Amazon. So she really went out there and helped me out with getting it. And I almost developed like a fear, right? Where I'm like, God, this is such like a cool pen. Like, how do I find like an alternative, like a backup just in case? So I've searched for those backups, right? And I will say, I'll draw like really small on here. This pen called, I'll write this stuff down at the end, or I'll have us make sure we formally type it. This pen called the Bolograph, which by the way, these are in the class. So I mean, like in the class, I talk about these, and I think I list them on the supply list as well. But I wanted to find stuff that was like similar feeling, and like this is a really nice pen, the Bolograph. It's got a really smooth texture. I would argue it's almost even like smoother, like a little bit more buttery than the Delphonics. It's a really smooth pen. So I found that one. And then a new pen that came out not too long ago. This was a Sktchy suggestion. I mean, like, I think it was someone in Sktchy told me to get this pen, which is awesome. And it's this Sakura, which is a pretty popular pen company. Sakura is actually the one that makes like Micron, which a lot of us have probably seen these if we're art supply junkies. So yeah, Sakura, the brand, came out with this ballpoint pen called a Retrico. So kind of like retro, but with extra letter Retrico. So the Retrico, and the Retrico is really thin. It's like a very fine pen. So same thing. It has like a really fine ballpoint pen behavior. And what's really cool is it's waterproof. And one of the last sketches I did as a video series where I did some watercolor stuff. I actually use this with watercolor, the Retrico, because it's waterproof. So yeah, there's like anything. Like I feel the same way. Sometimes I see a supply or I'll like see someone use something and I'm like, oh man, I want that so bad. Maybe I can't find it or it's like tricky. There's always these alternatives. And what I'm kind of building towards, or a good thing to remember, is tools are super cool. And then like what you'll want to do is just find like behavior you like. Like kind of figure out like what's the actual behavior I'm looking for. Like, do I need subtlety? Do I actually want stuff that's very like aggressive looking? I mean, like the mark is very aggressive, and that will really inform like the kind of supplies that you look around for, or that you source. Renee asks, how do you handle live sketches where people are active and moving before you finish the sketch? Yeah, Renee, to kind of confirm stuff you see on the paper here, that's why I do this, is because when people get up and leave, like you're trying to draw someone again, like the coffee shop, you're drawing someone in the coffee shop. This is what I'm literally doing. I'm doing like the ball and jaw. I'm trying to like get their head shape, or like their position rather. And then I'm trying to watch them. They're like drinking coffee or maybe they're talking. And I'm trying to catch them like in the same place again. Like if their head's in a certain position, I'm kind of like waiting for that position to kind of land again. But I came up on coffee shop stuff, and then also here in the Bay Area, I drew on the BART train all the time, which is really cool. It's like a total dojo. I really like that word for like training and art, like your dojo that you go into to like get better. The BART train was like an insane dojo for drawing, because if anyone has ever been to the Bay Area or you're nearby, um, first of all, that's all I need to say is the BART train, and we all know that there's craziness on there. It can be wild. And then secondly, it's like moving, right? It's like a literal train that's like moving, and people are like pushing against you, and you're trying to like draw, and it's like this. And I really got some chops in drawing people from drawing in that challenging setting. And so to answer your question about like how do you draw or how do you deal with that, what I would say is that the only way I ever successfully pulled off those drawings, and I might take again like literally 10 seconds, I'll run right across to this shelf and I'll grab some stuff to show real quick. But the only way I really survived drawings of like people moving and stuff was because I had a lot of this built up information about proportion that I could rely on to make like a decent looking head, even if someone walked away. And then I will admit, practice is always important, right? I sometimes don't like that answer because it seems dismissive when someone's like, well, just practice or do more. Like, it's true, but like, we also really want these answers. Like, give me the answer, give me the tip. But I will tell you, like, when you do it enough, you do actually learn to remember people even when they walk away. So, like, if they walk away or they're moving and then they, like, leave or whatever, you do really carry this, like, kind of phantom image of them in your mind, and you can sort of finish your drawing. At least that's my experience. And I'm a person that has no photographic memory. Like I do okay. Like I've done those. I've looked at those pictures of like imagination, or like how much do you imagine in your head, like when you're thinking of an image. And I'm literally like okay. I'm like not bad, but I don't have a photographic memory. I wish I did. That'd be amazing with what I do. So the way, Renee, that I actually finish a lot of stuff when people walk away or I'm in those situations, I gotta be honest, it's highly like engineering based, meaning like I'm just like building on a head, or I'm remembering the structure of like how their nose looks or the sort of angles of their ears. It's not as like romantic as other people might be able to pull it off, where they sort of, oh, I truly remember how this person looks. I look at a person or their face, even like the drawing that we're doing here, and my mind just right away goes into kind of like math mode. I'm not a math person. My mom was a math person. I think my dad even was pretty good at math too. He's not too bad at it. But I was never like a math person, like a numbers person. I do, however, kind of work in an engineering way, in like a building way. I have all that romanticism with art, where you have like the feelings and being in touch with it. But yeah, when it comes down to those moments, I think I just build. I kind of build and I think about building, and that's why I set myself up when I draw or when I think in a building way. I try to approach it like a builder, because the romantic side of art, the emotional part, is beautiful for the touch, like the way you hit the paper. But in those kinds of moments when you're drawing people and it's live and they move, that stuff it won't help you as much potentially. Like you'll have to fall back on some more practical means, right? But practice will. All that said, I have no like real photographic imagination, but I swear when I did all those drawings on the BART train and stuff, I got really much better at looking at someone and actually really seeing their face, like seeing their face and be like, boom, like I know what's going on with the structure, how they're engineered. I can build this. They could walk away. If I cut this photo off right now, like the photo over here, even though I know I'm kind of deeper into the sketch, but if I cut it off right now, a part of me wouldn't really care, because I would have like moves and ideas that I can rely on to finish this up and like give it a nice like polish or finish. Um, but yeah, I really encourage going out there and drawing people live. It's very thrilling. It's really cool. You know what I mean? Like it's just like a cool practice of drawing. It's that thing that's a little bit more exciting in my opinion than always just photos. And then it's extremely, if you're really dedicated and interested in getting better. And I'm not even talking like professionally. Like you don't have to sit there and like, draw or train or do the dojo like someone who's trying to make an entire living on art. But if you just have a desire to get better, which this is what's so cool. I think you're all in here for that reason, right? It's like you're in here because you enjoy the figure, you want to draw a portrait, you want to get a little bit better, you want to even like respect your craft, like this thing you're into. If you have any of those feelings, like go out and draw people live. It's a really good training ground. And people, by the way, are really cool with it. Like I've done it for years and years. Again, I did on the train and stuff. And some people have a fear even of drawing publicly, because they're like, what are they going to think of me? And even this is valid. People are like, are people going to be like weird if I'm drawing them? That's a whole nother conversation, right? Meaning like, you do have to draw people and be like respectful. You can't like stare at them or like stare a hole in them while you're trying to draw them. But yeah, otherwise, like everyone really thinks it's cool to see someone drawing, so no one really has problems when you draw in public. If anything, a big joke would be, it's really nice for people to acknowledge that you're drawing, right? They're like, wow, you draw, or like, wow, you're an artist. Like, of course, like we'd be lying if we didn't say like, oh, that's really cool, it makes me feel like cool or whatever. But to be honest, like people tend to like bother you when you're drawing publicly, and a lot of times you reach a level where you're kind of like, oh, I'm just trying to draw or practice, like I don't even really want to talk to anyone. And I get that. I would say I get that the most. And you'll definitely experience this if you haven't already. I think you get that the most at like the zoo. Like if you go and draw animals, or like you do watercolor animals at the zoo, people like nonstop will be talking to you. And the coffee shop's the same way. If you go to a coffee shop and you draw people, everyone comes up to you and they're like, "Wow, you draw!" And my favorite part is that people start talking about like what they do. They're like, "Oh, you draw? That's cool. Like I draw people," or like, "Oh yeah, I'm a painter and I like to, do this and that." Like it kind of encourages a conversation about art, which is awesome. But yeah, then also the idea is like you're just trying to draw. You're just trying to like practice or get your dojo working, right? Get your training, and people start like talking and taking up your time. It's funny. Um, but yeah, do it. Yeah, definitely draw. I'll keep working on this. I know I keep talking about like running over to the shelf, and maybe if one person tells me like go grab those drawings, David, I'll go grab them. But I definitely want to keep my focus here. Um, Everything again that we see on paper right now is referenced in the class, and it's stuff that is like my tried and true method, or kind of like my ideas. And what's cool is I think a lot of stuff that I teach like with Sktchy, and a lot of stuff that you see in the upcoming class, it reflects like years of drawing, of course, like years of experience and kind of what I find works. And then at times, like even in the class that I do with Sktchy, the one that's going to launch, you see things that I'm talking about things I just like learned or I'm just like really playing around with, like some really new ideas that I've only been using for a few months, let's say. Um, I even have a notoriety or like a notoriety with myself, like with that Retrico pen I was just talking about, where I said, oh yeah, I did some watercolor stuff with it for Sktchy. And to be honest, I think I used it for like 15 minutes before I started filming videos. Meaning like I truly at times will just kind of like throw myself into a new tool or like a new idea. And even in the class that I'm launching, you'll see some of that. You'll see some ideas that are kind of new to me that I'm interested in like exploring more. And that's a fun part about the class is that you see kind of like some in my world or like in my canon like some classic just David stuff. The Loomis kind of ball and jaw and some stuff that about drawing the eye, which I've had a lot of experience drawing eyes, and so I get really into the behavior of those. But yeah, there's also like some really brand new things I've just been starting to like mess around with, because like all of us, every day I'm drawing or I'm trying to draw, and then every day that I'm thinking, I'm sort of like thinking of new ideas or new theories or exploring, things I see online or from other people. I reach like most of us do. I reach points where I've been drawing for a while and I'm kind of bored. Like I'm kind of bored with my decisions, or I want to do something a little bit different, and so I go out there and kind of change my method or my thinking about a certain idea in portraiture. Um, I know that I think we're making great time. I see that we've reached an hour. I know that I have a little bit more time in me, especially because I'm just wrapping up some nice little bit of shading on this. But I would encourage, because I forget the time frame on this. Maybe Jordan, I can help me out with this real fast for the time that we'd be wanting to look at, because that way I'm what I'm building towards is like keep asking those questions. Like let's get some more questions in. Let's get you guys talking. Renee also asks, do you ask people before you start to draw them? That's a really good question and a super good thing to bring up. Um, when I'm on the BART train and stuff, I don't ask people to draw them. I go for it. And what I'd like to think is I'm being pretty respectful. So meaning I'm drawing people and I'm studying or like I'm sketching them, but I don't, in my opinion, feel like too bad about what I'm doing. I'm sort of making quick sketches, or I'm drawing like 5 or 6 people on a piece of paper. I'm not drawing like some super intense portrait like this of someone, let's say. So yeah, I don't ask people if I draw them. I just go for it. But I am really respectful of like how it feels or how it looks. I've even taken at times to wearing like sunglasses that are sort of like mirrored, meaning like you can't see my eyes, and that way I could just like sit in a park and draw people and not make them feel all crazy, right? Um, but what I would say, like, here's the direct answer, would be like I'd say it's probably like nice to ask people like if you're gonna draw them, but to be honest, it just like puts them on the spot. And what's crazy, like I talked about with reference pictures, is I rather draw people candidly. I don't want someone to think I'm drawing them. That kind of like ruins the whole positioning and like idea for me, because then they'll just like stiffen up or they'll be really self-conscious, or that's where you truly invite those conversations with like, why are you drawing me? And so yeah, I usually just again go for it. um but yeah, great question. And again, be respectful. Like draw if it doesn't feel right, or read the room, make sure like people wouldn't be like weirded out. That's why public stuff, of course, is really good. Like the coffee shop, the park. The park is like the most anonymous because you're just there and there's so many people and it's so open. The BART train's kind of funny because it is a tight spot and people can see like what you're doing and like how you're drawing someone potentially. But I've done it for years, and I've literally for years and years I've done this. I've never had a single problem. I've never had someone be like weird about it or be like, "Hey, why are you drawing me?" or something, And very rarely I've had people, of course, like want to see like, "Oh, were you like drawing me?" or like, "Are you drawing people?" And I'll be like, "Oh yeah, I was drawing you." And again, that's nice. You just show them, and yeah, I've done it forever and never had like a big issue. Uh, let's see, Jordan, or sorry, I said Jordan because Jordan's writing to me. It's from I can't. This might be from Renee potentially, because I see on the chat. So it says your values build up using strokes going mostly one direction. it's cool and it gives me confidence to follow along. I always struggle with seeing contours. Planes are easier. Yeah, contour shading, which that term, if you don't know, is when you kind of like shade with the direction of the actual anatomy. And of course, stuff like this is, you have observation on a picture, and then stuff like this really drives that conversation for how it could look. So we can do that, but going back to all that shading, like ideas of shading and stuff, I tend to just use like this nice like up and down idea to build these washes. And it works for me. I definitely do contour. In fact, I've actually introduced a little bit more contour stuff to my drawing or my shading. But overall, I like washes. I like kind of building up simple washes of shade. So that's just kind of the way. That's just kind of suited me, especially over time, and even especially for a setting like this where we're doing like these quicker drawings. And then Renee also says, I relate to the not being able to remember. I have a lot of partial sketches. I start to feel rushed or panicked to hurry it. Yeah, again, it's practice. Like it's definitely like an intense environment to draw people. And then Peanut, like that, it says pencil brand or link. Yeah, again, there's this is the Delphonics. So if you go on Amazon and put DELFONICS, Delphonics, you should be able to find it pretty easy. And we can also put some links to it. And the class itself has, I believe, links or like the list, so you can see all that stuff in depth. Renee also asks, "What do you do about storing all the sketches and artwork?" I'm not the person to ask that, unfortunately, because I scan stuff, right? I'll scan things that I draw, and then I sell it, or I give it away, or even like it's probably cardinal sin to say this, but it's like I've totally just gotten rid of sketchbooks because I'm moving or something. So yeah, I'm a big person about like just scanning it, like keeping a record of it. I have sketchbooks that are special to me, like that I like, or maybe even was like a cool part of my life or my career where I was like learning a lot or updating my skills. It's sort of like a level up moment. I'll have a sketchbook where I think, oh, I really came together in this moment with these sketches in this book. But yeah, I don't store stuff. I mean, paper is not terrible to store because it's all flat, right? But I have some books, but I just tend to I figure out a way to not hang on to it because there's quite a bit of it, especially when you're sketching and you're doing a lot of this kind of work. It can add up after a while. But if you can, especially if you live at a home, like you have a house that's a little more permanent, that's where you got to get a flat file. Like that's the best thing you could have for drawing. It's just a nice flat file that you can put all your work into. And then I see, Sktchy and Jordan posting, posting the comments. If you're drawing along, that sounds great. Again, we can definitely get some of those supplies and lists and ideas to everyone a little bit more specifically. So this is a nice point for me, like not a bad spot in terms of like how I feel. And what's cool is you can always take a drawing like this and push it further. Like you can definitely put more rendering into it. You can put more action into it, activity. But it's also like a sweet spot that's nice to hit sometimes where it could go further, but it's got enough information. It reads well, and I'm feeling that with this. I always in my Sktchy course with my little bit of activity. Which I think I have the book right. I think I have the book near me, so I can show you this really fast. Um, so I always put like a little bit of this like activity, this like scratching on the sides, because it's a cool contrast. It's like a cool juxtapose with what I would call like the controlled information, and then like a little bit more like expressionist or like kind of like really wild energy on the side. So it's like control and energy. I just like that idea, and I think I actually have the book. Yeah, it's right here near me. This comes from one of my absolute favorite anatomy artists, which is Civardi, I believe is how it's pronounced. I'm actually learning Italian, so I better get that right. So yeah, Giovanni Civardi. And you can see Giovanni works in pencil primarily. He's an older Italian artist. I want to say he's in his like 70s at least. And yeah, I love this book. It's one of my favorite anatomy books. And then I always love this like activity that he kind of puts on the edges of his drawings. He takes again these like tight drawings and puts this nice like cool energy around them, and so it's almost like a form of like animation. So I got really into that. So for years now, that's my Chavardi kind of homage is that little bit of animation on the sides. Um, yeah, I as far as I could tell, I feel like I think we're since we hit that hour mark, I think we're winding down a little bit, and so make sure you can see this in the picture. This was awesome. I had such a great time doing this with everyone. All these questions were great, and I definitely want to thank Jordan absolutely for not only hosting this, for Sktchy hosting this, but also for being awesome to like type in the chat and give me all that info. Um, if you have any questions further about supplies, I'm sure we'll fire up a post where we can type some of that out. You can, of course, again, see all these supplies and more of this stuff in the class that's launching. And so the class is launching, I believe, on the 6th. So it's launching very, very soon. You can sign up now for it, of course. And yeah, the class will be the 21 heads, as we say, like up to 21 heads, 20 plus. I'm going through all these pieces I've mentioned about the structure of the head and then the features themselves. And we're drawing heads the entire time and then building towards the end where we draw heads with ballpoint pen, and then I want to bring this up that also with pencil. And each of the lessons does have a little bit of both. There's a little bit of like pen, there's a little bit of pencil, so you can kind of see both versions or both approaches. And other than that, the goal of it again would be to teach you the structure drawing, to teach you truly the understanding of the head a little bit deeper. And all of it kind of in this flavor of sketching, which I think is great, where we kind of focus a lot more on uh, these more immediate kind of efficient techniques for drawing the head. I had a wonderful time. I hope you guys had a great time as well. Thank you so much for showing up, for typing those questions and comments. I'm most excited to see you sign up for the class and make some drawings and post them up so we can all see them. If you have any other questions too, reach out to Sktchy or reach out to myself on Instagram. You can find me on their page. And I think we'll call it a morning. But thank you so much for being there. I see lots of thank yous. Thank you. I see some more questions like about shading cheeks. Yeah, actually keep those questions up, or like maybe ask them even on the Instagram, and I could probably make a little tutorial or a quick little thing about any of those questions. Yeah, thanks so much, guys. I had a great time. Check out the class. Check out Sktchy's page. I